The hunger I was feeling that day wasn't normal, the kind that makes your stomach growl so loudly that it feels like a monster is trying to get out of you. So, without thinking too much, I went into the first restaurant I saw, the kind of cool place that appeals to everyone. There were vegan and vegetarian options and, of course, a good juicy beef burger for those who don't give in to the social pressure of lettuce. I sat down, took a quick look at the menu, and ordered without ceremony, a beef burger with bacon and melted cheese. I wasn't kidding. This was a life and death mission. Everything seemed calm until I felt a look. You know that feeling when you know someone is watching you? That twinge of suspicion that runs up your spine? I looked up, and there she was, sitting 2 tables away, staring as if I had just committed a crime against humanity. At first, I ignored it. Maybe she was just one of those people who stares at nothing, and, coincidentally, that nothing was me. But then came the first warning sign. She started shaking her head in disapproval. Seconds later, the woman huffed loudly, picked up her bag, and marched over to my table. I was still uncertain whether something good was going to come of it, but, to be honest, I knew better.
Or are you really going to eat that?
Her voice dripped with venom and a touch of superiority I'd only ever seen in an insufferable office boss. I blinked, a little confused. Yeah, it was at that moment that my life turned into an episode of a reality TV show. She put her hands on her waist, puffed out her chest, and started making speeches like she was running for president of the animals.
What you're doing is an outrage. It's a barbaric act against innocent living beings. How dare you ask for this here?
I could hear the kitchen in the background, the cutlery clattering on the plates, the background music, and the dead silence of the entire restaurant. Because now, guess what? I was the protagonist of the day's soap opera. Girl, I tried, but she cut me off with a dramatic gesture.
You can change. There's still time. You don't have to be a corpse-eating monster.
I didn't know whether to laugh or call a priest to exorcise her. The waiter approached slowly, with the expression of someone who had seen this scene before. My plate arrived at that very moment. And that's when things escalated to a level that even I wasn't prepared for. She looked at the burger, then at me, then at the burger again, and then she did it. Crazy. With one swift movement, like a ninja of other people's food, this woman grabbed my dish and threw it straight in the garbage can. Yes, you heard right. My precious hamburger, my dream meal, my reason for happiness, was now mixed with dirty napkins and leftover salad that other people had decided not to eat. The silence in the restaurant turned into a tense murmur. The waiter's eyes widened. Well, I could only stare at the garbage, feeling a deep mourning for the meat and bacon that would never reach their true purpose, to make me happy. And it was at that moment that I realized this woman really did think she was right. Well, I was just starting to enjoy myself. Look, I'd seen people who were heroes, but never someone who thought that their great mission on Earth was to save a hamburger. Or rather, not save, because that one had already gone to waste. Now, as I stared into the void where my food should have been, the woman looked at me with a victorious smile, as if she had just ended world hunger. The whole restaurant was silent, just the sound of cutlery hitting plates and a few disguised coughs here and there. Even the waiter, who must have seen everything, was standing still, holding his tray as if he needed a minute to understand that this had really happened. And me, well, all I could do was laugh. Not with happiness, of course. It was the short, incredulous laugh of someone who has just witnessed a crime against humanity. Because yes, throwing a hamburger like that in the garbage can should be considered a crime. The woman crossed her arms, her chest puffed out as if she were expecting a medal. I swear I saw the Miss Hamburger Savior gleam in her eyes. And that's when it started. She looked around, realizing that she now had an audience. And, like any completely unbalanced person, she decided to double down. She raised her chin and began a speech worthy of a dramatic Netflix documentary.
This man was going to consume an innocent being, but I stopped him. He doesn't understand that every piece of meat is a cry of despair. I saw the opportunity to act, and I did.
The woman really thought she was putting on a show. And what's worse, some people were filming. Obvious. If there's one thing humanity loves more than good food, it's gratuitous chaos. The poor waiter finally moved, but he seemed a little lost, like someone who has woken up in the middle of an earthquake and is still deciding whether to run or lie on the ground and accept his fate. "Ma'am, you can't just take a customer's food and throw it away," he said, and I could tell he already knew it wouldn't do any good. and indeed, it didn't.
I can, and I did.
She hit the table, causing my glass of soda to bounce slightly, and it was at that moment that I realized something. I was being challenged. This was no longer just random madness. Now it was a game, a duel, a moral tug-of-war where, apparently, I was the villain with cow's blood on my hands. And you know what? I've never been one to turn down a good game. "Bring me another hamburger," I asked the waiter, without taking my eyes off her. The silence in the restaurant became more tense than the end of a reality TV show. The waiter hesitated, looking from me to the woman, probably calculating how many days of therapy he would need after this shift. The woman's eyes widened. For the first time, she seemed to realize that I wasn't going to bow my head and apologize to the spirit of a ghost ox.
You can't be serious.
She whispered, with an indignation so deep it seemed personal. I smiled. I am. And, by the way, bring fries too. It was at that moment that she snorted so loudly that I thought she was going to have an aneurysm. The waiter looked at me, then at the woman, then at the manager, who was now watching everything from afar with the expression of someone who just wanted to know if the police would have to be called. The battle was on, and I was going to win. Do you know when a small dog barks at a truck and thinks it's going to win the fight? Well, that was exactly the spirit of the woman in front of me. The problem was that she wasn't a cute dog that you forgive because it has a short paw. No, she was the human equivalent of a jackhammer at 7 in the morning. My order had been placed. Another burger was on its way, and the poor waiter seemed to be accepting the fate of that shift becoming the stuff of legend on the employees' WhatsApp group. But the woman? Oh, she didn't take it so easy. She looked at me as if I were a hitman who had just admitted to killing the Queen of England. Her face went through a series of emotions in a matter of seconds. First fury, then shock, and finally, the conclusion that she would have to raise the level of crazy if she wanted to be victorious. And that's exactly what she did.
You haven't learned anything.
What? She pointed a trembling finger at me, almost as if she were cursing my soul.
You're insisting on eating meat even after what I've done.
The urge to laugh was almost irresistible. I could have explained that no, in fact, I hadn't learned anything. Because there is no class where the lesson is accept strangers deciding what you can and can't eat. But honestly, I wanted to see how far it went. So I just crossed my arms and smiled. With fries? She gasped. Yes, she did. Like a character in a Mexican soap opera when she finds out that her husband has another family in another town. And that's when she turned to the waiter, determined to save what was left of her dignity.
Don't bring him anything.
The poor waiter froze. And for a second I thought he was actually going to consider that order. But then, with the calm of someone who has dealt with drunk customers, fighting couples, and children knocking over orange juice, he just sighed and said, "Madam, this restaurant serves beef burgers. If you don't like that, perhaps you should look elsewhere." She was so indignant that I thought she was going to faint right there, just to see if anyone would call the press. But instead, she did something even worse. The woman spun on her heels, marched up to the cashier, and pointed at the manager, who was now looking on from afar, probably calculating how much time was left until the end of working hours, and whether there was still time to resign before the next disaster.
I demand that this restaurant be more ethical.
A girl. We're a burger joint. And it was at that moment that I saw it in her eyes, the realization, the brutal truth, the final blow that was perhaps the most painful of all. She had gone into a burger shop to complain that they were selling hamburgers. The audience watching the scene was already trying not to laugh. A guy at the next table even coughed to disguise a choked laugh. But her, oh, she wasn't going to lose the battle without one last blow. With the dignity of a dethroned queen, she took a deep breath, turned to the door, and announced,
I will never set foot in this place again.
And she stomped out. The whole restaurant was silent for a moment, and then, as if everyone had been waiting anxiously for this moment, came the first round of applause, then the second. And in a matter of seconds, I was sitting in the middle of a burger joint, where people were cheering the defeat of the most insufferable woman who had ever set foot in the place. The waiter patted me on the shoulder before leaving. Your burger's coming, champ. Peace had returned to the restaurant. The waiter placed the new burger in front of me, gave me a complicit look, and I finally prepared myself for the first bite. A sacred moment. The glory of winning an absurd battle. But the universe has a cruel sense of humor. Before I could savor my victory, the restaurant door opened again, and there she was. This time, she didn't come alone. Behind her, a policeman. Impeccable uniform, exhausted expression, and the posture of someone who already knew that this was a waste of time. The entire restaurant froze. Everyone who had just enjoyed the previous scene now watched in disbelief, waiting to see how far the madness would go. The woman entered with firm steps, pointing at me as if she were handing over a dangerous fugitive. Her posture was pure indignation, her face red, her chest puffed out as if she expected the officer to handcuff me on the spot. The officer looked at me, then at the restaurant, then at her. She began a speech about moral laws, violence against animals, and the criminal connivance of an oppressive burger system. She spoke as if she had uncovered an international corruption scheme, as if she was about to be nominated for an activism award. The policeman, on the other hand, just listened in silence, waiting patiently for her to finish her monologue. The whole restaurant held its breath when he finally answered. Without taking his hands off his belt, he raised an eyebrow and said something that, in a nutshell, meant, "Ma'am, this is a burger joint, and ordering a hamburger is not a crime." The air rushed out of her lungs, as if they had punctured her ego balloon. For the second time that day, she gasped. Perhaps she expected the policeman to start interrogating me, or to escort me out, while people applauded her courage. But all she got was a bored look and an awkward silence. She turned to the whole restaurant, hoping for support, but no one said anything. Some people looked away, others held back their laughter. Her fight had died there. No attention, no audience, no allies. The final blow came when she pointed a finger in my face and decreed that I was a terrible person, as if that was her last card before disappearing into oblivion. And then, with no other option, she spun on her heels and left the restaurant. This time, for real. The policeman watched her leave, looked at me, then at my burger. He didn't say anything, but his expression was clear. He too thought the whole thing had been a big waste of time. He nodded and left without ceremony. Finally, I could get my burger. The first piece tasted like victory, but as I chewed, I realized something. Some people were still looking at me. A few discreet smiles, some whispered conversations. And at the next table, a young man was holding his cell phone with the camera open. The waiter approached again, holding back his laughter. "You know you'll be on the internet tomorrow, right?" And at that moment, I understood. The woman could have lost it in the restaurant, but on the internet, the war was just beginning. The next day, my face was on the internet. Someone had recorded everything, and now the video from the restaurant was going viral, as if I had discovered the cure for worldwide boredom. The comments were exactly what you'd expect from the internet. People were shocked, laughing, making memes, and even suggesting that the burger she threw away should be listed as historical heritage. But the best part, they discovered the woman's social networks. And like anyone who doesn't know how to lose, she didn't ignore it. She made a point of posting long texts about how she was censored and humiliated by a system that protects butchers. Even the policeman, according to her, was part of a global pro-burger conspiracy. The problem? The internet is relentless. It only took half an hour for someone to find old photos of her eating ribs and roast chicken. Chaos ensued. The restaurant took advantage of the wave and posted a subtle provocation. Now, our burgers come with extra protection against extremist activists. What about me? Well, I just wanted to eat in peace. But at least now, I had a free burger forever in that restaurant. If this video has got you this far, what about the next ones? So subscribe to the channel, give it a like, and come and have a marathon. We've chosen 2 videos that you'll love. Just click on the card on the screen. See you in the next one.